There's something strangely fascinating about people who close their eyes, cover their ears, or simply leave the room when a horror movie starts. While most laugh at the scares or cling to their chairs in a mixture of fear and excitement, they seem to freeze, as if the brain has activated an emergency button, abandon ship. Now. But is this just nonsense, as many say, or is there a deep reason behind this almost instinctive rejection? First, it's important to say, there's nothing wrong with not liking horror. Not everyone needs to prove their courage by watching scenes of blood or loud jumps to be considered strong or cool. Some simply don't feel pleasure in that kind of adrenaline, and that doesn't make them any less interesting, on the contrary. But if we dig a little beneath the surface, we'll find that, for many of these people, the fear of the film isn't just about the film. It's about something much bigger. Perhaps, at some point in their lives, they witnessed something that left a lasting impression on them. Not necessarily a film, it could have been shocking news, an accident witnessed, or even a story told in so much detail that the mind stored it as its own memory. The brain then makes an association. If that affected me so much, imagine what a movie made to scare can do. And so, fear becomes widespread. It's not about the screen anymore, it's about losing control of your emotions. Another possibility is that these people have an extremely vivid imagination. While some watch a horror film and know that it's just fiction, they see, hear and feel everything as if it were really happening. The sound of the knife cutting into flesh, the sigh of the villain behind the door, the shadow moving in the corner of the screen, all of this floods the senses so intensely that the body reacts as if it were in real danger. For them, watching a horror film is not entertainment, it's about undergoing a near-death experience, and no one should be judged for not wanting to go through that. There are also those who avoid terror for the sake of emotional self-protection. People who are very sensitive or who have experienced trauma may have a lower threshold for stress. A scare at the cinema can trigger anxiety, insomnia, or even panic attacks in the following days. Their brain already has enough to process, why add more weight? In this case, running away from terror is not cowardice, it is wisdom. It's like avoiding a food that you know will hurt you. It's not weakness, it's self-care. But here comes the most interesting part. This aversion to horror can reveal deep personality traits. Those who cannot watch these films often have heightened empathy. They not only put themselves in the shoes of the victims on screen but suffer with them, as if other people's fear were contagious. They also tend to be people who place a high value on security and control, and a horror film, by definition, is about losing exactly that. Furthermore, they may be individuals with a heightened awareness of mortality, for whom scenes of violence or death are not just fiction but uncomfortable reminders of the fragility of life. And if we look at it from another angle, this inability to watch horror films could actually be a superpower in disguise. While the world was distracted by cheap scares, they developed a keen sensitivity to what really matters, the beauty in simple things, the depth in genuine emotions, the courage to face real fears, not those invented by a screenwriter. Perhaps they learned that the real terror is not on the screen, but in the indifference, in the loneliness, in the injustice of everyday life. And, on the face of it, a scary film is just noise. If you are one of these people, no, you are not fearful, nor exaggerated, nor weak. You just have a different relationship with fear, a relationship that often protects you from fear and unnecessary burdens and allows you to live life with an intensity that others don't understand. And if someone makes fun of you because you run away when the movie starts, remember, courage is not about not being afraid, it's knowing which fears are worth facing. Now tell me, can't you watch horror movies either? What bothers you most about them? Comment below, and if you know someone like this, share this text to make them feel less alone. Oh, and if you liked this reflection, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Until next time, and may your nightmares, if they come, be only good ones. Crescent Moon. The fear we choose not to face, and what it reveals about us. Have you ever stopped to think that what scares us in films says more about us than about the film itself? It's no wonder that some people close their eyes at the clown's jump scare, while others tremble just listening to the Hereditary soundtrack. Terror is not universal, it is personal. And when you say, I can't stand horror movies, you're really saying, this fear here, I don't want to look at it in the face. Not today. But why do some fears haunt us more than others? Why might a ghost be just a special effect for one person and a recurring nightmare for another? The answer lies in what psychology calls unresolved emotional wounds, those things that life has taught us to fear without us even realizing it. What your fear of movies reveals, without you knowing. 1. Fear of abandonment, zombies, and apocalypses. If you hate zombie movies, or any story about social collapse, you may deep down fear being alone. It's no surprise that these films explore the idea of no one is safe, not even the ones you love. For anyone who has felt the taste of loneliness, whether through loss, betrayal, or simply growing up in an emotionally empty environment, watching The Walking Dead is like reliving the pain of being left behind. What your brain screams: if the world ends, no one will save me. The hidden truth: you value loyalty above all else, and fear is just a warning that you need to surround yourself with people who won't disappear when things get bad. 2. Fear of loss of control, possessions, and demons. Films like The Exorcist or The Nun aren't just about the supernatural, they're about something taking over you against your will. If these are the ones that make you break out in a cold sweat, it may be that, in real life, you are afraid of not being in charge of your own choices. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your opinions were ignored, or you've been through a situation, a toxic relationship, an illness, a financial crisis, that made you feel like a prisoner. What your brain screams: if I lose control, I will destroy myself. The hidden truth: you are stronger than you think. This fear only exists because you know how powerful autonomy is. The challenge is to trust that, even in times of chaos, you still have a voice. 3. Fear of repeated trauma, torture, and graphic violence. If you run out of Saw or Hostel, it's not just disgust, it's memory. The human brain is programmed to avoid pain, and when you see scenes of torture, it sets off an alarm. This has already happened to me, or someone I love. I don't want to relive it. It can be direct trauma, an accident, abuse, or indirect trauma, seeing a loved one suffer. His fear is not of the film, it is of the memory it may awaken. What your brain screams: if I watch it, I'll feel it again. The hidden truth: you have an enormous capacity to protect yourself. This fear is a shield. But remember, you are no longer the one who suffered. You are the one who survived. 4. Fear of the unknown, creatures and monsters, Alien, It, The Thing. If what paralyzes you are things you can't name, like the Babadook or Stranger Things, it may be that, in real life, you have difficulty dealing with uncertainty. Maybe you're the type who plans everything in advance. Company, who hates surprises, who needs clear answers. The monster in the film is the perfect metaphor for what you can't control: the future, death, the what if. What your brain screams: if I don't understand, I can't prepare. The hidden truth: you're brilliant at creating safety, but life sometimes asks us to trust the process, even without a manual. Fear of the unknown is just your survival instinct speaking out loud. It doesn't mean you can't learn to dance with uncertainty. 5. Fear of being judged, slasher and masked killers, Friday the 13th, Scream. If you hate killer movies that prey on teenagers, especially those with scenes of humiliation before death, you may deep down fear being exposed, ridiculed, or rejected. These films explore the idea of someone is watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake so they can punish you. If this resonates with you, perhaps you grew up in an environment where making mistakes was dangerous, whether at school, at home, or on social media. What your brain screams: if I fail, I will be destroyed. The hidden truth: you are much more resilient than you realize. This fear only exists because, at some point, you learned that being imperfect was a threat. But here's the truth: the people who admire you most are the ones who see you trying, not the ones who see you perfect. Why you're not weak: you're selective with your energy. Society loves to label: oh, you don't like horror? How scared. But here's the secret: those who avoid certain fears are often those who understand them the most. You don't run away because you're weak, you run away because you know the weight those fears carry. And that, my friend, is not cowardice. It's emotional intelligence. Think about it: why would anyone choose to relive pain for free? If you've ever struggled with loneliness, why would you watch a movie that makes you feel abandoned? If you've ever felt the panic of not having control, why expose yourself to scenes that leave you paralyzed? You're not running away from the movie. He's protecting himself. And that, ironically, is what makes you braver than those who laugh at your fears. Because courage isn't about ignoring danger, it's about knowing which battles are worth it. And if your battle today is to preserve your peace, then you are winning. What to do with this fear? No need to watch the movie. If you want to understand your fears without having to face them on screen, try this. 1. Identify the pattern. What kind of scene makes me close my eyes? Possession. Blood. Stalking. What does this remind me of in real life? A betrayal. An illness. A moment of vulnerability. 2. Rewrite the narrative. If the film makes you feel abandoned, ask, today, who is on my side? If it makes you feel out of control, remember, what choices do I have now that I didn't have before? 3. Turn fear into power. Fear of loneliness can turn into independence. Fear of trauma can become resilience. Fear of the unknown can become curiosity. Practical example. If you hate drowning scenes because you almost drowned as a child, instead of avoiding all movies with water, you can watch something like Moana, where the ocean is an ally. Write about how you overcame that moment. Or simply accept that you don't need to relive it, and that's okay. A final reflection, and an invitation. Horror, deep down, is just exaggerated life. It takes our real fears and amplifies them until they become monsters. But here's the magic. When we understand this, the film loses its power. You don't have to like horror. You don't need to force yourself to watch something that's bad for you. But if you want, you can use these fears as a map, a guide to understand what still needs healing, what has already been overcome, and what, deep down, you are much stronger than you realize. Now tell me, which type of horror scene affects you the most? And, most importantly, what do you think this fear is about? So tell you. Comment here, and if you know someone who also runs away from horror films, share this text. Sometimes we just need to know we're not alone in the dark. And if you liked this reflection, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Because life is scary enough, the least we deserve is to understand our own fears. Until next time. And remember, the only monsters that need to be faced are the ones that already live inside us. Crescent Moon Sparkles. The fear that lived in the closet, and how I faced it without knowing it. Have you ever noticed how some fears don't scream? They don't jump off the screen like a cheap jump scare, nor do they hide behind clown masks. They breathe quietly, like an unwanted guest who took up residence in your closet years ago, and you only notice when the door creaks at midnight. I had one of those. Not horror movies, although Hereditary still makes me sleep with the hallway light on, but those quiet, domestic fears, the fear of taking up space. Of being too much. That if I talked loudly, laughed loudly, loved loudly, someone would come with a calm down, you're exaggerating note. It was as if my existence had a maximum volume allowed, and I lived with the control on 3, afraid that, on 4, it would already be offensive. Until one day, the closet opened by itself. The right size theory, and why it's a trap. We learn early on that some things are just right. Smiles, not too wide, otherwise it looks forced. Anger, not too high, otherwise it's dramatic. Love, not too intense, otherwise it scares. And so we prune our corners to fit the molds. The problem? Nobody teaches us what the right mold is. So we invent rules based on what we saw. My mother never cried in front of others. Crying is weakness. My father always solved everything himself. Asking for help is incompetence. At school, anyone who talked a lot was called annoying. Better to keep quiet. And then, without realizing it, we become experts in diminishing ourselves. But here's the plot twist. The world isn't measuring you up. That imaginary ruler? You're the one holding it. And the worst part, it is always marking a lower number than what you actually occupy. The day my fear tripped over a glass of water. I remember the exact moment that fear slipped and fell. I was at dinner with friends, telling a story, one of those that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. Suddenly, one of my laughs echoed louder than the others. For a second, I froze. Casilda, you're attracting too much attention. But then, no one stopped laughing. Nobody rolled their eyes. No one whispered how exaggerated. On the contrary, someone said tell more. It was as if, suddenly, someone had turned on the light in the closet, and there he was, my fear, small and dusty and ridiculous, crouched among old showboxes and a coat I no longer wore. You spent years cowering, because of ME? The mathematics of fear, or why 90% of them are lies. Take the test, write down your 3 biggest fears, those that make you hesitate, postpone, silence. Now ask. 1. How many times have they actually come to fruition? X. If I ask for a raise, they'll fire me. How many times has this happened? 0. 2. What did you lose because of them? Opportunities, relationships, versions of yourself you've never met. 3. Who, exactly, is enforcing these rules? Spoiler, it's not society. It's the 12-year-old version of you, scared by the angry teacher. Fears are like debts on a card you never used. We pay interest on something we didn't even buy. The instruction manual for disassembling your cabinet. If you also have an unwanted guest living in your what-if rooms, here's the step-by-step guide to sending them away without fuss, and without calling the priest. 1. Give him a name, yes, like a cartoon monster. This one is the fear of being too much. He wears a tie and carries a ruler. Why it works: taking fear out of the abstract and making it concrete, and even ridiculous, reduces its power. 2. Take the 5-second test. Before you become silent or slow down, count to 5 and do the opposite. X. I'm going to say this even if my voice shakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Speak. Science behind: the brain takes 5 seconds to activate the fear autopilot. Interrupt him. 3. Collect evidence that he is wrong. Every time you take up space and nothing bad happens, write down. I spoke my opinion at the meeting, no one cursed me. I cried in front of my friend, he hugged me. Effect: you are reprogramming your brain with real data, not 1998 guesses. 4. Adopt a temporary alter ego. Create a version of yourself that isn't afraid to take up space. Give it a name, a look, a theme song. When you feel fear tightening, ask, what would alter ego do? Real example: Beyoncé used Sasha Fierce in shows. It works. 5. Remember, discomfort is the rent for change. If it's tight, it's because you're growing. Closets are not made for people. They are made for things. The truth no one tells you, but you already know. Here's the dirty secret the fears don't want you to find out. The world is not waiting for you to be small. In fact, he's not even looking at you that much. Most people are too busy fixing their own cabinets to notice yours. And those who criticize, they're probably scared of the same thing you are, and they hate seeing someone do what they don't have the courage to do. So the next time your fear whispers, "You're taking up too much space," respond, "Yes. So what?" Your invitation to the quiet revolution. Now I want to hear from you. What is the fear that lives in your closet? What do you avoid doing, being, speaking because of him? What would happen if, just today, you ignored him? Try it and come back here to tell me. And if you know someone who also keeps shrinking, share this text. Sometimes, we just need a little push to realize that the closet was always bigger on the inside than we imagined. P.S. If you liked this reflection, save this text and come back whenever fear knocks on the door. And if you want more insights like this, subscribe, because life is too short to live in Volume 3. Until next time. And remember, the cabinets are for hangers. You are to occupy the world. Globe showing Europe-Africa sparkles. Why does this text work? Strong central metaphor, the closet, that guides the entire narrative. Personal example, dinner, that humanizes and creates identification. Manual structure, step by step, that provides practical use. Impact phrases, discomfort is the rent of change, that are shareable. Emotional CTA, invitation to action plus sharing. Extra tip: whenever possible, use personal stories, even if small. They are the glue that holds the reader to the text, because no one can resist a good story, especially when it rings true.